Okay, Schlockmeister fans, I'm going to do something over the next, I don't know how many months or whatever. It's kind of more for me than anybody else, but I'm going to do it nonetheless. I've been reviewing these movies on YouTube since 2012. I had an old channel which went away about a year ago, and I started a new channel almost 1 year to the day from today. However, it's not my first time reviewing movies. I actually started reviewing movies back in 1989 when I was a teenager. I used to have cassette tapes. I would just take a microphone and just start. I wanted to go right down my movie list from start to finish and just review everything I had, because at that time there was a lot of movies I hadn't seen, and there still is, unfortunately. And I wanted a record of it just in case, I was ever curious, oh, what is that movie about? I could always just pull up my review and listen to it. That was my plan. Dorky, maybe, but nonetheless, I was happy doing it. So anyway, I never actually finished doing that. However, I did do it periodically over a number of years. I started in '89, then I stopped, and I picked it up in 1993 again. And then I think I've done them all the way. I know I was doing them in 2000. I think I may have done a few in around 2005 also. It's just went on a long, long time. I ended up going through about over 1,200 movies on my movie list. I just started from movie number 1, which was Creepshow, and I just went right down the line. And I was trying to watch everything. Like I said, I never finished it though, and now I have over 4,000 movies in my collection, so I don't plan to ever finish it. I'm done with the audio cassettes. But anyway, I used to listen to these tapes sometime at night. When I was going to bed, I would just put a tape on so I could listen to see how it turned out and that sort of thing. And ultimately, these things would put me to sleep. I don't know if they were boring or they were I would just tune into it so well that I was concentrating on that, and then I would just fall asleep at some point. And sometimes I didn't even get it very far into these things. And it was really interesting to me because I could look at my movie list the next day and say, yeah, oh, okay, I heard the review for Deadly Eyes, but I never heard the review for Cujo. So that means I fell asleep somewhere between Deadly Eyes and Cujo. And it was just kind of fascinating to me, especially, if there are some times when I just can't sleep. My mind is always working, and I'm always thinking of things, and it's really frustrating because I'm tired, and I want to sleep, but I just can't because my mind just doesn't shut up. But if I listen to these reviews, it would just put me out, and it was great. I got great night's sleep. And I've always remembered that over these years. I haven't had a working cassette player, or at least nothing hooked up, in probably 20 years. However, I've been thinking about this recently, and I still have all those tapes, so I recently purchased a little cassette thing off of eBay for about 15 bucks, which hooks up to a computer. And I started listening to my reviews again, and just like it did back in the 90s, I listened to these things, and I fall asleep almost immediately. I might last 5 minutes, I might last 10, but I always fall asleep in a fairly quick fashion, which is awesome. So again, I don't know if they're boring, or they're just, I don't know, they're just a perfect cure for not being able to fall asleep. So anyway, so you might not find these interesting. There's no, it's just audio. There's no video here. I probably will put some posters in there so you can see what movie I'm talking about. But again, I don't know if anybody else is going to find this interesting other than me and my fellow Schlockmeister Jeff, who heard some of these reviews long, long ago as well. But other than that, it's just me droning on and on and on, reviewing my movies on a 4-star basis like Leonard Maltin used to do. I find it interesting just because it's me, it's my movies, and it's just kind of a relic from my past. Like I said, 1989 was almost 30 years ago. It was the summer of '89 when I started these. So I'm going to put a few of these up. Again, they're probably mostly just for me, because I still will probably intend to listen to this. Rather than hook up this cassette every night and put that earphone in my ear, I can just listen to YouTube. I can put on my video and just listen to it and fall asleep, and then I can just pick up right where I left the next day, or next night I should say, not have to fast forward or rewind on a cassette tape. I can just go right to the spot and I'll say, yep, I heard the review for Salem's Lot, but I never heard the review for Cheech and Chong's Still Smokin'. So I will start with Still Smokin' tonight. That's what I'm going to do, so I encourage you to do that too. If you have trouble sleeping, put these reviews on. They will put you to sleep. I guarantee it. It works like a charm. So anyway, the next thing, if you're watching number 1, which is going to be, well, the first one, obviously, this is going to take you back to, I believe it was July of 1989. You can hear little old teenage me. The first movie you're going to hear is Creepshow. I'll probably use this same intro for any video I put up with these reviews. But anyway, curious what you think about them. Are they boring? Do they put you to sleep? But again, that's the challenge. Have these videos, or have these, I guess videos, they are on YouTube. Have them put you to sleep every night. I want to see if it works for everybody else just like it does for me. So anyway, here come the reviews from a long, long time ago. I hope they put you to sleep like they do me. Watch them. Bye. Listen to them.
Hello and welcome to Bert Rates the Movies, Bert Rates His Movies, Volume 1. The date is Tuesday, July 25th, 1989 at 9:29 p.m. at night. The Brewers are playing the Tigers right now. They're losing 3-1. And on this tape, and I'm sure other tapes to come, I'm going to be going one by one down my movie list and rating every movie I have on tape. And, which means I'm going to have to watch every movie again. And, you know, I haven't seen some of these movies in a long time. Some of them, in fact, a lot of them I haven't even seen at all. So it'll be good. And some of these films, like when I rented them, I saw them once. And that's it. I haven't seen them since. And there's little clips I remember from here and there about good things, and I don't know, I'll just watch it all again. I'm sure I'll have a good time, and I'm sure I'll be bored sometimes watching stuff that I don't want to watch, but, you know, I want to see stuff like Return of the Aliens Deadly Spawn. I mean, I saw that once. It's so great. I've only seen it once. It's such a great film. Anyway, I'll be rating on a 4-star basis, 4 stars being best, 1 star being the worst, and I will say bomb for films that are just plain awful. Just awful. And I'll try to give you little character names. I'll describe certain scenes to you and everything, and honest to God, I'm going to sit through every film, even stuff like Greystoke, Dune. I'm going to be sitting through the whole things of that. It'll be boring, but hey, what the hell, you know. It's my life. I can do what I want. So, I'm not going to start tonight. I'm just getting this tape ready to go. And, but tomorrow I'm probably going to watch CREEPSHOW and SALEM'S, the first 2 movies on my list. And right after each film, I will come to you and I will rate it, tell you about it, describe it, and whatever. So, the next thing you'll hear will be tomorrow, the 26th, Wednesday. I'll be right after watching CREEPSHOW, so sit back and enjoy. This is Bert Rates His Movies, Volume 1. Alright, I just got done watching CREEPSHOw, and it starts off with a boy who's being yelled at by his father for reading comic books, CREEPSHOW comic books, you know, and he doesn't like him reading this stuff and everything, and then he takes all his comic books and throws them in the trash. Now, as his comic book sits in the trash can, the wind blows the pages open, and it goes through the stories of this comic book. And the first story is called Father's Day, and it's about a woman who had a real jerk for a father, always yelling at him, calling her a bitch, this and that. And it's Father's Day, and he sits there demanding his cake. Where's my cake, Bedelia? I want my cake, you bitch. It's Father's Day, you promised me a cake. And then she hits him over the head, kills him. Now, every year on Father's Day, she comes back, looks at his grave, talks to him, and whatever. But this year, the father comes out of the grave, attacks her, kills her, and the father runs back to the house, kills a couple other people, takes off a woman's head, puts it on a platter, puts some candles in it, and it says, it's Father's Day, and I've got my cake. It's a really good story. Verrill here. And a meteor drops, and Jordy Verrill, a country boy, you could say, not the smartest individuals, but he gets it, and he touches it, and he gets little welts on his finger, and eventually starts growing into grass. Now, eventually anything he touches will turn into grass, and eventually he's touched his whole body, and pretty soon he becomes a giant weed. And then he kills himself. Not a bad story either. The third story is called Something to Tide You Over. It's about, it stars Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson. Now, Ted Danson has been, or Leslie Nielsen's wife has been cheating on Leslie with Ted Danson. And Nielsen doesn't like it at all, and he goes over, kidnaps Danson, and buries him up to his neck in the sand. And then we find out later on that he did the same to his wife. He buries them up to their neck in the sand, and then the tide comes in and kills them. Now, then these two, the man and the when the women come back from the grave, from the water, and they put Leslie Nielsen in a hole and have the same thing happen to him. A very good story. Very good. The fourth story on this in the CREEPSHOW is called Crate, or The Crate, I don't know, but Adrienne Barbeau is in this, and Adrienne Barbeau, she's a real bitch. She's constantly bitching, and she's just very annoying. And this janitor discovers this crate underneath some steps. It says Arctic Expedition 1834, June 19th, 1834. He calls up one of the, he finds this crate at this camp at University. Kills him, eats him. Then the professor goes and gets a student to help him out here. The student ends up getting killed too. And so this professor goes back and goes to who is Adrienne Barbeau's husband. And so the husband goes down there, leaves him story, cleans up all the blood, all the mess, and then once his wife gets there, tricks his wife into going by the crate, and then the creature comes out and eats the wife. Then he locks up the crate, takes the crate, and dumps it in the river. And the very last thing you see is the creature breaking out of the crate. And the last story is called They're Creeping Up on You, starring E. Marshall, played Upson Pratt. And he's a well-to-do businessman. And he's the kind of person that'll do anything for money. And he's a real jerk too. And he lives in this real fancy apartment. It's totally spotless and clean. It's all white and everything. He's got computers set up, and the only problem he's got a cockroach problem. And this cockroach problem finally escalates. And eventually the cockroaches end up killing him, coming out of his mouth, coming out of his stomach. And of course there's the exterminator man at the door. "What's the matter, Mr. Pratt? Bugs got you tuned?" Anyway, and then after that, after they're creeping up on you, they go back to the beginning where the kid has ordered a voodoo doll and is getting even with his dad for throwing out his comic books. I enjoyed this movie. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I enjoyed it. And I give this movie 3 stars. Alright, it's 1:52 in the afternoon on the same day, and I just got done watching Salem's Lot. And it's about a writer, David Soul, who moves into a town near Boston. And people start dying off one by one. It turns out there's a bunch of vampires running rampant all over town. And they're watched over by James Mason, who he's friends of the vampires. He kind of keeps track of them, you know. And this movie's kind of rare for movies these days. It delivers a lot of scares. I mean, there's a lot of scary parts of this movie, and this is a really scary movie, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I give it 3.5 stars. Today is the 27th now. It's in the morning, around 11 o'clock. Last night I watched, at John's house, I watched Porky's and Porky's 2. Porky's is about a bunch of high school kids. It's set in about 1957, I think, and about all they're interested in is having sex. That's about all they're interested in. And basically there's no plot except at the end when they want to get even with Porky, a guy who runs this kind of a strip bar kind of thing. And they get even with him and trash his place. But all in all, I mean, I laughed in this movie. There was funny parts in this. And all in all, I'd give this movie 3 stars. Porky's 2, The Next Day, was really a pointless film. It really didn't need to be made, except maybe just to cash in on the success of Porky's. And Porky's 2 basically centers around all the kids are going to do a production of Romeo and Juliet. And Reverend Bubba Flavel, I think his name was, doesn't want, he thinks this play is sort of pornographic. I guess there's some suggestive lines in there, I don't know. And he petitions to try to get this play closed down, and all in all, eventually the kids win in the end. And it also involves members of the Ku Klux Klan, and I don't know, it's a weird movie. It wasn't that funny. It was all right though. And after reviewing it again last night, I'm changing my opinion. I'm going to give it 2 stars. Now, before I would probably give it a bomb, but I give it 2 stars because it was watchable. I just got finished watching the movie Space Raiders. It stars Vince Edwards as Hawk and David Mendenhall as a boy who his parents are like diplomats on this planet. It's a space age movie here. And Vince Edwards is the leader of a bunch of space pirates who are stealing a ship from this place. And the boy happens to just be on board. He was just kind of like running around, not knowing what he was doing. He just kind of wandered onto a ship and ended up being taken along. And the plot basically circles on Vince Edwards' promise to get this boy back home, and it's got very good special effects. I mean, it's an okay story. It's certainly not up to par with movies like Star Wars and everything. I think they tried to show off too many of what life is supposed to be like in the future. Anyway, but I want to give it 2.5 stars. It's about 2:37 in the afternoon now, and I just got finished watching Nightmares. And Nightmares is like CREEPSHOW. It's got 4 stories involved in it. The first one is called Terror in Topanga, reference to Topanga Canyon somewhere in California. And it's about a woman who goes out to buy cigarettes one night, and it turns out there's a killer on the loose, and the killer almost gets her, but a gas station attendant shot him. Anyway, the second story is called The Bishop of Battle, and it's by far the best one of the 4. It's about a kid, Emilio Estevez, who's become obsessed with beating a video game in the arcade called The Bishop of Battle. He really wants to get to level 13, which is the end. And finally, one night he breaks into the arcade to play the game, and he beats it. And then, to his surprise, the level 13 is real. The spaceships and everything that come after him come out of the machine and are attacking him right there in the store. And eventually, the bishop takes over Emilio and puts him in the game forever to be the Bishop of Battle. I don't know. The third story is called The Benediction, and this is a weird one. It was about a priest who is getting ready to leave this town somewhere, probably in Texas, New Mexico, that area down there. And but this pickup truck, this black pickup, won't let him leave, and it keeps running his car off the road, running this and that. I really didn't enjoy this one at all, but there was one good scene where the pickup came out of the ground. That was neat. And then the last story was called Night of the Rat. It's about a family who's got problems with rats, or so they think. It turns out they have a problem with a 6 or 7 foot gigantic rat running through their house, eating wires, tearing up the walls. All this rat wants is its baby back. It turns out that was killed in a rat trap in the house. And I don't know, this movie really wasn't that great. The Bishop of Battle is the only redeeming part of this film. So I'm going to give it 2 stars. It probably would get a 1-star rating if it wasn't for the Bishop of Battle, but I'm going to give it 2 stars. Alright, I just got done watching 3 Cheech and Chong movies. First one I watched was called Still Smokin'. It was the last Cheech and Chong movie where they played the characters of Cheech and Chong. And it wasn't a very good ending, so to speak. Cheech and Chong, believe it or not, get mistaken for Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton, and are invited to a film festival in Amsterdam. Basically, the film centers around, later on, Cheech and Chong are going to give a concert, and all they do is sit around and try to think up ideas for their concert, and then they think about things they've done in the past, and they show what they've done in the past. But the only funny scene in this movie is when they were thinking about an old bit they did called the wrestling bit, and there's a wrestling scene here with Cheech and Chong. Cheech as Itchy Scratchy, and Chong as the Italian wrestler. I can't remember his name now. And they fight the Invisible Man. That's about the only good quality. That's the only good scene this film has. Otherwise, it's pretty lame. So I'm going to give this film 1.5 stars. On the other hand, Cheech and Chong's next movie was great. I mean, I hadn't seen this film in a long, long time. I used to watch it on a regular basis, every other day or so, and now I see why. It is a very funny and entertaining movie. In fact, there's no plot to this film at all. Things just happen. It's just a day-by-day thing with Cheech and Chong, but there are so many disgusting and funny scenes, and it also contains the famous scene where Cheech drinks pee, and also features Chong's now famous song Beaners. This film, I don't know, it's just a very good film, and I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Now, also, I watched Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke. Up in Smoke was the first Cheech and Chong movie, and has become a cult movie over the years, and it basically shows how Cheech and Chong met, and basically all they want to do is score hash somewhere, somehow. So all they want to do is get high and eventually they're in Mexico, and they have to drive a van back to the U.S. Now, they don't know it, but this van is entirely made out of marijuana, a certain kind of marijuana that can be hardened into plastic, a plastic-like material, and can easily be smuggled across the border, which is what they do. Of course, they don't know it. And at the end, they win a rock little festival like Battle of the Bands, where the winners get a record contract, and Cheech and Chong will win that. And this film also shows that tells what Cheech and Chong's real names were. I mean, in all the other movies, they were just known as Cheech and Chong. But their characters' names, Cheech's name is Pedro. I didn't catch the last name. They did say it, but I didn't quite. It was kind of muffled. And Chong's real name is Anthony something. Anthony, I don't know, but it was the very first Cheech and Chong movie, and it's a very good movie. A lot of funny scenes in this one, too. I don't think it's quite as good as Cheech and Chong's next movie. That's why I'm going to give it only 3 stars. Today is Saturday the 29th now. Last night I watched the movie Escape from New York. So, Donald Pleasant, Isaac Hayes, Ernest Borgnine, Adrienne Barbeau. And it takes place in the year 1997, and in that year the entire Manhattan Island of New York City has been turned into a giant prison. There's a wall all the way around it, and unruly prisoners across the U.S. are just shipped to Manhattan Island, and they're just stuck inside there, and they get to fend for themselves then. And inside there's gangs and everything. And the President of the United States was flying to some important conference overseas, and his plane was hijacked, and the President crash-landed into Manhattan Island and was taken prisoner by the Duke of New York, who was played by Isaac Hayes. Now, Kurt Russell, who is a convict and is on his way to the island, has been given a deal by Lee Van Cleef, who plays Hulk, is the guy's name. He offers him, he says, you get a full reprieve if you can go in there and get the president out, and he has to be done within 24 hours, otherwise, he's got this conference to go to, and it's real important. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. So Kurt Russell flies an airplane in, and then he's got to go through, and he meets people along the way who help him out, and eventually him and the president escape from New York. And this is a real good movie. It's just powerful. It's a really good movie. I'm going to give it 3 stars, and it's an exciting and thrilling movie to the end, and it's just really good. So I'm going to give it 3 stars. Now today I only had a chance to watch one film, and that was The Bad News Bears, the original The Bad News Bears, starring Walter Matthau, Tatum O'Neal. Walter Matthau is the coach of a little league team, the Bears, and to put it mildly, the Bears suck. I mean, they're just terrible team. But Walter Matthau gets a girl that he knew a couple years back, a little girl, Amanda, and he gets her to be his star pitcher for the team, and eventually they get a local kid named Kelly Leak who just kind of hangs around, a tough kid who's really strong and who's also very good at the plate. And eventually he brings the no-good Bears into a really good team, and they end up playing in the championship against the Yankees at the end, and they lose by 1 run. And this is a really good movie too. Nothing spectacular about it, but all in all, it's just a fun film to watch, and it's very enjoyable. And I'm going to give it 3 stars as well. I just got through watching the film Zapped. Today is Sunday the 29th, I think it is. And it stars Scott Baio, Willie Ames, who went on to, those two went on to do Charles in Charge. Also has Heather Thomas and Scatman Crothers in it. Now, the film is about Scott Baio. He's a whiz kid, a brain, sort of. He is into, like, scientists, and he's always in the lab doing experiments and everything, and he drops this thing on the floor, and it kind of gives off smoke and everything, and suddenly he's got telekinesis, and he can move objects as he pleases. He can lift skirts if he wants to. He wants to every once in a while. And anyway, Willie Ames, he wants to use Barney. That's Scott Baio's character. Willie Ames wants to use Barney's power for his own uses, you know, gambling, this and that. And that's just basically all it is a movie about this kid and the thing he does with his powers. The movie, to be honest with you, is kind of lame. It's alright to watch, but there's nothing special about it, so I'm going to give it 2 stars. Well, the date is now August 3rd at around 10 to 10 at night. It's been a couple days here since I've done this. I've watched 3 films since then. The first one is, ending note to Zapped. According to Joe Bob Briggs on Movie Channel's All Night Theater a few weeks ago, he said they're going to make a sequel to that called Zapped Again. None of the same stars, but I don't know. As Joe Bob put it, why? Anyway, the next film I'm going to talk to you about is a film called My Bodyguard. It stars Chris Makepeace, Adam Baldwin, and Matt Dillon in his acting debut. It also features Martin Mull, Ruth Gordon, and a little clip of George Wendt in there if you look closely. The film is about a kid who moves, or actually he's gets transferred. He used to go to a private school, you know, but now he's going to a regular public school. I believe it's New York City. It's a big city, I know that. And when he gets there, he finds out he's kind of a nerdy little kid. And when he gets there, he finds out that Matt Dillon... Oh, what am I talking about? This isn't Matt Dillon's acting debut. That was Over the Edge. Sorry for that. Anyway, he finds that Matt Dillon and his thugs kind of rule the school and charge protection money to all the kids. And this year they especially got something to protect him against, or so they say, you know, because a new kid named Ricky Linderman, who rumored that he killed a teacher and killed his brother, this and that. Of course, Dillon and his thugs are scared to death of Linderman, but Linderman's a quiet kid, and he doesn't want anything to do with anybody. So, the new kid here, the nerdy kid, I can't remember his name now. Oh, damn, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he refuses to pay, and he has a couple outings with Dillon. Eventually, he tries to approach Linderman and ask him, tell him that he'd pay him to be his bodyguard. First he backs down, but eventually he finally breaks down and says, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it." And then the kid goes into a local eat place. I don't know, they're eating hamburgers, this and that. He goes and squirts Dillon and his friends with ketchup and mustard, and then runs across the street and hides behind Ricky Linderman, who tells everyone to beat it. So this film is a really good movie, and hold on. Anyway, later on, Dillon gets a bodyguard of his own, and eventually there's a big confrontation between the two. This is a really good film, and you really got a feel for the little kid who's being pushed around by Matt Dillon in this movie, and therefore I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. The next film I'm going to tell you about is Bad Boys, starring Sean Penn and E.C. Morales. The film takes place in Chicago. Sean Penn is a street kid who lives on the streets, gets his money by mugging ladies and attacking people. And E.C. Morales is Mexican. He hangs out with a couple friends, and they're about to, they have a whole suitcase full of drugs, and they're going to sell it to these other people. And Sean Penn finds out about it, and him and a friend of his, Carl, decide to break in and steal it all. So a big confrontation comes on the streets. The drugs are dropped, and there's a shootout. Carl dies. One of Morales's, his name is he plays Paco Moreno in this film. Paco, one of his friends, dies. Everyone takes off. Sean Penn ends up in a car chase with the cops, and accidentally runs over Paco's little brother, and subsequently is sent to a juvenile hall for kids. Of course, what else would you find in a juvenile hall? It's for big offenders. It goes up to, I don't know, I guess up to 18, I suppose. I tell you, some of the people in there looked a lot older than 18. I don't know. Anyway, Paco wants revenge with Sean Penn, whose character's name is Mick O'Brien. And to get even with O'Brien, he decides to rape O'Brien's girlfriend, played by Ali Sheedy. Well, Moreno gets himself caught and subsequently thrown in the same prison with Sean Penn, who by that time is the boss of the place. And well, eventually a bunch of confrontations lead to the climax of the film with a big fight between Paco and O'Brien. So this film goes beyond good. This film is excellent. I mean, it depicts it so realistically, like, and you got O'Brien's bunkmate named Horowitz. I'm not sure who plays him. He's a little Jewish kid, but he steals a lot of scenes in this movie, and he's funny, let me tell you. And well, this movie is just excellent. You can't really say much more about it. So I'm going to give this film 4 stars. Alright, I just got finished watching King Kong, the 1976 Dino De Laurentiis remake. And frankly, the main problem with this film is it's too long. It's something like 2 hours and 14 minutes. It's too long, and there's a couple slow-moving scenes in here. I didn't think this film was so bad as critics made it out to be when it first came out. I enjoyed it except for its length. There was some real campy parts, though, like when Jeff Bridges figured out that Kong was going to climb the World Trade Center because it looks similar to one of his home surroundings. I don't buy that at all. And of course, King Kong can smell Jessica Lange a couple miles away and find her in a bar and take her out. I don't know, this film is really campy, but all in all, I thought it was okay. So I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. Alright, today is now August 4th, and I just got finished watching Psycho 2. Yes, it's 22 years later, and Norman Bates is coming home. The movie is about Norman, who's just released from the psycho ward after 22 years. Is declared sane by the people. And the sister and her daughter of one of the victims, the sister of one of the victims, doesn't want Norman to be released, of one of Norman's original victims, you know. So she and her daughter have decided that they're going to terrorize Norman and to drive him crazy again. So what they do, they write him notes, you know, and make phone calls saying this is your mother and this and that, and occasionally walk around the house and in Norman's mother's clothes and garments and things. And eventually it works. Norman is driven over the edge, and but it turns out this film has a little twist to it. Turns out that Norman's mother from the original movie wasn't really Norman's real mother. It was just his adoptive mother. And Norman's real mother, who is in this film, when she finds out what these two are trying to do to her son, she takes revenge and starts killing people. This movie certainly isn't up to par with the original Psycho, but it's really good, and it does deliver some shocks. That twist at the end is really unexpected. You don't expect that at all. But all in all, this is a pretty good movie, and I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Alright, it's the same day, and I just got finished watching Valley Girl. The movie stars Nicolas Cage and Deborah Foreman. Deborah Foreman, she's from the Valley, and all her friends are from the Valley and everything. She lives in the Valley. And she breaks up with her boyfriend and takes to a guy who lives in Hollywood, who's outside the Valley, kind of a punkish guy. And none of her friends like it, and eventually she dumps him and goes back to her old boyfriend, and then eventually the Nicolas Cage, the punker, wins her back at the end. Basically, the reason this movie was made was to cash in on the Valley Girl craze, or the Valley talk, for sure, totally, and this kind of crap. But all in all, this was a pretty decent movie, and nothing really wrong with it. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Okay, I just got done watching Strange Invaders. It's a sci-fi film. Okay, I guess back in 1958, these space aliens came down to study the planet. And 25 years later, they're getting ready to go home. Only one of their females has had a daughter by an Earth person just recently, in fact, and the daughter's only about 6 years old or so. And now the space aliens want to take this daughter home, and the daughter's father finds out about this, and of course he wants to get her back, and with the help of someone who saw the aliens years ago, and with the help of a tabloid news reporter, they succeed in getting her back. This movie stars Paul Lamont, I believe his name's pronounced, I don't know, Nancy Allen, and Diana Scarwood. And this is a really good film, and it's got good special effects, and it's got a good story plot, so I'm going to give this film 3 stars.
Well, it's been quite a long time. Today is Saturday, August 26th. Still 1989, though. We just got in the process of moving from Two Rivers to Manitowoc, so I'm in Manitowoc now. And first of all, there's one other film I watched before I left, which I didn't get a chance to say, and that was The Unseen. And let me also say, The Unseen I'm going to describe as one of my original 143. That was a list I made. I made a list of movies that I would tape if they ever came back on cable again. I went through all my old cable guides. I made this list in 8th grade, and that was one of the films on there, The Unseen. So I'll call that, from now on, any movie that I get like that, I'll describe and such. Other movies that I also went through that were the original 143 are Bad Boys, Psycho 2, Valley Girl, and Strange Invaders. Okay, now The Unseen, which is also one of the original 143, it stars Barbara Bach, Ringo's wife. She's a news reporter, and she and 2 other reporter friends go to, I believe, somewhere down near New Orleans to film something, and all the hotels are booked, the reservations somehow got canceled, they need a place to stay. So this rather roly-poly man named Ernest says he'll take him in. He owns a big house, and Ernest lives with, I believe it's his sister. I can't remember her name offhand. It's been a while. And they take in these two. Now, it turns out Ernest and his sister had a child together years ago, and this child was retarded and stupid or something, and the child is played by Stephen Furst. He's now grown. He's about 20 years old in this film, maybe. And Stephen Furst, all he does is stay in the basement. He stays in the basement, and he's just some kind of maniacal creature, and he runs around going... He just sits there and grunts whenever you get to see him, which isn't too often. And he kills off the first 2, and then Ernest goes nuts, and he wants the third lady killed too, so she traps him down there. And this is all interwoven with Barbara Bach's relationship with Doug Barr, who plays a football player in this movie. And this movie's really neat, but it's awful bizarre movie. There's some bizarre parts where Ernest is talking to his dead father's spirit or something, and it was talking back, and I don't know, it was really weird. But all in all, I liked it, and I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Now, tonight, I just got finished watching Savage Harvest, which is also one of my original 143. It stars Tom Skerritt, and it's about this family living in Africa, in the bush somewhere. I don't know exactly what they're doing. They live in a big mansion and everything, and they have a bunch of, well, not slaves, but maids and whatever. They got a lot of people running around, and there's a big drought there now, and a bunch of lions going on a rampage and start killing people. And then they all get trapped in this house, and then they eventually make some kind of thing out of bedposts and everything, and make a little cage. They get in the cage, and they escape through the door and get to the car and drive away. This film is a little bit scary. I mean, think about being in a house, killer blood-sucking lions on the outside. So I enjoyed this film, and I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Alright, a few days ago I finished watching the movie Hardcore. This movie was also one of my original 143. It stars George Scott, and he's the father in a very church-oriented family. They live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and his 2 daughters go off to California on some kind of church trip, some kind of thing like that, and one of the daughters doesn't come home. And it turns out she's gone into the porno industry, and Father George C. Scott goes into California, tries to find her, and eventually does, and takes her home. This movie is really good. He really gives you kind of a good view of the porno industry, or the sex industry in California. You get to see the real steamy and dirty sides of it. It's really neat, and I'm going to give this film 3 stars. Okay, and right now I just got finished watching Happy Birthday to Me. And this movie stars Melissa Sue Anderson from Little House on the Prairie. And she's going to Crawford Academy. And she's a member of the top 10 students there. And the top 10, they hang around together, they're friends and everything, and one by one, they start disappearing and dying. And it turns out that one of Melissa's friends is dressed up as Melissa Sue Anderson and killing these people, and assembling them for Melissa's birthday. And it turns out that Melissa and this other girl were sisters. Turns out Melissa Sue Anderson's mother, who's dead now, had an affair with this other girl's dad, and that caused her parents to break up, and she never forgave him. Thus, she goes around killing everybody. This movie's good. This was also one of my original 143. I saw it a long time ago, and I'm going to give this movie 3 stars as well. Hi, I'm back. Haven't done this in a while. In fact, it's now January. You're going to think, wow, January 1990 now. Not exactly. It's actually January of 1993. Ho! 3.5 years later, getting back into business here. But better late than never, right? Right. I have one change to make on those reviews. Early on, I rated Cheech and Chong's next movie. I gave it 3.5, I think. It's up to 4 stars now because it's an excellent film. Anyway, my next movie is 48 Hours, which I watched last night. It's January 24th, 1993. I watched this last night at work. It stars Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. Nick Nolte is a cop who's trying to catch an escaped killer who escaped out of jail. And to help him out, he enlists Eddie Murphy, who is also an inmate, and he used to be in the same gang as the guy who's escaped. So he gets Eddie Murphy out on a 2-day pass to help catch this guy. And they go all over town, shoot-ups, this and that, and eventually, at the end, they end up killing the guy. And Eddie Murphy goes back to jail. That's a pretty brief summary of it, but this movie is great. Not only is it full of a lot of good action, but it's also very funny. There are some unbelievably funny scenes, and just to listen to these two guys jabber back and forth at each other is great. This was, I believe, Eddie Murphy's first starring role, or not starring role, but first role in a movie after Saturday Night Live. And this film was great, so I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Now, the next movie on the list is Airplane 2, the sequel. Very good movie. Of course, it's not as good as the original. Not too many are, but this one's pretty good. It's really good. This time it involves Robert Hayes and Julia Haggerty. This time Robert Hayes has been institutionalized following the end of Airplane 1. They framed him and set him up because now they're talking about bringing people on space shuttles as a form of transportation, and Ted Stryker, who is Robert Hayes, test drove the space shuttle and found a lot of flaws with it, but they wanted to shut him up, so they had him framed and institutionalized him. He escapes from the institution, the Ronald Reagan Institute for the Mentally Insane, and he hitchhikes or buys a ticket to the lunar shuttle where Julie Haggerty is, and of course things start happening. The shuttle isn't working anymore, everything's breaking, and Robert Hayes comes in to save the day. This is a very good movie too. Sonny Bono has a little bit part in this, and William Shatner plays like a commander in the army or something near the end of the film, and he's hilarious too. Like I said, this is not up to par with the original, but it's very good, and I'm gonna give this one 3 stars. All right, the day is now January 29th. I just recently watched the movie Little Darlings, which stars Tatum O'Neal and Christy McNichol. The plot centers around these two girls go to this summer camp for girls, of course. I believe it's like an entire summer trip. And while they're there, these two girls, Tatum O'Neal, and Tatum O'Neal plays a character named Ferris. Christy McNichol plays a girl named Angel. Ferris is from a rich family, and Angel is from like the streets, that kind of deal. They don't get along immediately. They're about maybe 14 years of age, maybe 14, 15, somewhere like around there. Anyway, these two girls are both virgins, and suddenly everybody in their little camp troop or whatever starts betting on which one will lose their virginity first, and pretty soon the whole camp gets into it. And eventually, each chooses a boyfriend, or chooses someone that they are supposedly going to do it with. Ferris chooses one of the camp counselors, who's about 40 years old. Angel chooses Matt Dillon, who plays somebody named Randy, who's at a boys' camp nearby. And it turns out Angel actually wins the bet, and she does sleep with Randy. She gets quite mentally disturbed about it, though. Ferris lies and says that she did sleep with the camp counselor. So she's the one who admits it, but Angel keeps it to herself that she actually won. So Ferris apparently wins the bet. Then later on, they admit to each other what really happened, and that's about it. This movie was pretty well done. I think my favorite character in this movie has got to be Matt Dillon. I think he did this movie right after Over the Edge. He must have. It's from 1980, and I think Matt Dillon's character was probably one of the best in there. So I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. The next movie I watched is called A View to a Kill, which is turned out to be Roger Moore's last Bond movie. In this one, he goes to investigate a guy named Zorin, played by Christopher Walken? Yeah, I think that's it. Whose horses keep winning these horse races. It turns out he's injecting the horses with some kind of magnetic device, and then when he sets off a magnet, they go nuts and run real fast and win the races. Turns out what he's got planned is he wants to blow up Silicon Valley completely and drown it in water, so then his silicon plant, which he has, will be the only source of silicon in the world, thus jacking up the price, of course. Of course, Bond finds out, and Bond takes care of business. The female stars are Tanya Roberts, who's the good girl, and Grace Jones, who is supposed to be good looking. I have an argument with that, though. She plays Mayday. She's the bad girl. And there's a great climactic scene in this movie that takes place on top of the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's pretty cool. This movie was a pretty decent movie. I liked it. And looks like the tape is going to run out soon. You're going to have to flip it over for the next one. I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. Like I said, Grace Jones was kind of ugly, but what can you do, man? I don't know. I'm just going to try to ramble on for a few seconds while this tape runs out. Flip it over to side 2. The date is February 6th, Saturday, February 6th, at about 11:35 in the morning. Come on, tape. I got 6 more movies to do on side 2. I've been watching a lot this past week.